All right, this is our last lecture of this unit on biodiversity. Some beautiful pictures are coming your way, some interesting topics. First of all, biodiversity. Bio means life, diversity means it's not all the same. So biodiversity is the total of all of the genetic variation of life and organisms in the biosphere. And hopefully when you understand from the lab activity that we did, is my food web stable? Or how stable is my food web, that biodiversity is the key feature for the survival of an ecosystem. We want to have lots of different habitats, communities, and ecological processes in the living world. That's where it's at when it comes to survivability. We want lots of different species, different organisms, and in that species, we want lots of different genetic diversity. And when we combine the genetic diversity of all of the organisms on our planet, we want lots of genetic diversity. Not all just a monoculture. So why is biodiversity so important? Everything counts. Not just the pretty animals. Everything, even the worms, even the ugly insects, even the bacteria, even the fungus. Everything counts. Everything's important for the health of an ecosystem, of our biome, of our biosphere. It's our greatest natural resource. So much we have been able to develop as far as medications from the biodiversity and the plant and animal life around us. There are lots of threats to biodiversity, destroying habitats, alien invasive species. That does not mean things coming from outer space. It means people on purpose or on accident or not realizing how much of a problem it is, bring species from one place to another, and we're going to talk about it more, but then they sometimes grow out of control in places where they were never meant to be. Genetic pollution, changing DNA, some people feel is a threat to biodiversity. Overexploitation, as we mentioned in the previous lecture, overfishing, deforestation, climate change, diseases, and overall human overpopulation. Okay? Changing our habitats, hunting species to extinction, pollution, foreign species, all of these things can reduce biodiversity. The worst part about a loss of biodiversity is extinction of species. When a species completely disappears from all of its natural habitat or just part of it. If we only have it in zoos, isn't it basically extinct? It'll never recover once we just have specimens in zoos. We have many animals that are endangered. Look at the panda, the cheetah, the lesser panda is there also above the bald eagle. There's a tiger, the manatee, the chimpanzees. I believe that's an Arctic fox. Those are Asian elephants, not African elephants. Asian elephants have smaller ears. And then I want to say, but I don't think that's a stork. I'm not sure what that bird is there. I should know. It's in my PowerPoint, huh? My bad. So every time you threaten a species, it becomes threatened first and then endangered. You're losing genetic diversity in an ecosystem. You're losing biodiversity. When we change habitats, habitat fragmentation, you're going to see here in a minute, I have a nice picture of actual satellite images of Alberta, Canada, where through human development, they took a vast area of unspoiled land and chopped it up into little fragments. And then animals aren't able, and plants as well, aren't able to grow and commingle and intermix anymore because of habitat fragmentation. So you see there 1949, 64, 82, and 91, how much loss of habitat there is in that ecosystem as humans spread and expanded. And those areas, those white patches, are areas where you've lost all that greenery. This other picture here is showing an area where you've had deforestation, and then you have little clumps. Well, there's still animals living in those areas, but that's habitat fragmentation. Now, they aren't able to interbreed and mix with these other populations or with each other. They're almost like they're living on a little island. And so that's going to decrease the species diversity as well as the genetic diversity within those species. One of the other things is along with loss of habitat is our demand for products that are coming to us from wildlife. Every year, the United States confiscates products that are made from endangered species. So prepare yourself for some disturbing pictures coming up. So you see, what do you see here? Tusks from elephants. Elephants that are killed just to pull off that ivory. Skins from tigers and grizzly bears and wolves. Bottom left, those are horns that are cut off of a rhino. Why? Because they shave them down and they consider them an aphrodisiac, something that makes you in the mood for love. And in the bottom right, those are the hands of great apes, that the apes have been killed and then the hands are chopped off as a prize. Horrible images to see. And people, this is on the black market. So these would be things that were confiscated and found in, like undercover sting operations. But you guys hear all the time about poachers going onto protected land and killing animals to take their tusks or their horns. So it's very sad. Pollution is another way that we're destroying biodiversity. DDT is a chemical that was used historically as a pesticide. And they did not realize that it was as dangerous as it was when they started using it in the 40s. And you can see here that picture is DDT. It was used to kill mosquitoes. And so they were spraying it like on a beach. And notice the kids are out running around in it. The problem is that it was considered harmless at the time. But what we didn't realize, and again, this was a long time ago, but what we didn't realize is it did not break down in the environment. And once it was picked up by an organism, it stayed in their system. And as we went through the food web, the DDT, the toxic chemicals built up in the tissues as you move up the trophic pyramids. So as you look, you've got the DDT in the soil, okay? You've got your grasses growing, picking up DDT into their tissues. The animals then feeding on the grasses, they're getting the DDT in their tissues. Then the animal that feed on those is getting the DDT. And as you go up and up the trophic pyramid, you get more and more DDT at each level. And this is called biological magnification. So the DDT was in the water. It was incorporated into the cells of the producers. The producers were eaten by the zooplankton and it accumulated in their tissue. The zooplankton was eaten by the small fish. It accumulated in their tissue. Small fish were eaten by larger fish. It accumulated even more. And then you get a fish-eating bird which got the most. Not just DDT. This doesn't just happen with DDT. Mercury. Mercury also experiences biomagnification because mercury stays in your tissues. It does not go away. Here on the bottom right-hand side is a diagram showing biomagnification or bioaccumulation. So in blue is your contaminant. Your little fish down here hardly have any. But these fish are eating those, and so it gets more. These fish eat those, and you get more. And as you go on and on and on, whether you're eating fish or you're eating shrimp, notice every level gets more and more of this toxin or heavy metal if it's mercury. Guess where we eat? Well, if you're eating fish that has a lot of like tuna, Halibut, not so much, but if you're eating tuna or swordfish or shark, you're ingesting salmon also. Lots and lots of these toxins. That's why there's warnings on them. If you start looking, pregnant women, nursing women should be careful. These could have high levels of lead and mercury and so on. Read the labels. Look at it next time. You'll be surprised at the warnings that you see on fish products. So here we have our producers with a little bit of DDT in their tissues. The zooplankton, a little bit more. The small fishes, a little bit more. The larger fishes, a little bit more. The fish-eating birds, even more. What's the big deal? Well, DDT, they found out that DDT caused the eggs of this bird, which is the California condor, it caused the shell of their eggs to be really, really thin. So the condor would lay its eggs, but then when it would sit on its eggs, it would crack them. And so the population of the condor, they nearly went extinct in California. And it wasn't until some really intensive rehabilitation work and removal of the DDT being banned in the United States and most other industrial countries that bird populations have been able to recover. So, an interesting thing here in California. We now have condors in the wild again. Introduced species. This would be invasive species. Species that are invading, not always on purpose. A lot of times they're brought in by accident. But the new habitat was in balance based upon the organisms that were naturally supposed to live there. And natural predator-prey relationships controlled the populations. When you introduce a species into an environment, it doesn't have a natural predator. So this is kudzu, a plant that was brought in from Asia, and it was brought in to be a house plant. Well, it didn't just grow on people's porches. It started taking over porches, and before you know it, here is some trees that are actually covered with this vine, this kudzu vine. It grows really, really fast. There are no animals here that naturally eat it, so it doesn't have a natural predator. And it's growing out of balance, and it's taking over entire areas of forest. Zebra mussels, a type of a mussel, a bivalve. That means it has two shells. When you go from one Great Lake to another Great Lake, you can carry water with these zebra mussels in it in your engines. And that's how the zebra mussels are getting transferred. And then it actually grows up into the pipes, and it outcompetes waterways for other animals that are supposed to be living there. So many other examples of natural invasive species that are destroying natural ecosystems. So conserving biodiversity, conservation. Conservation doesn't mean, you got to be a tree hugger, you got to go crazy, you have to eat vegan. That's not what conservation. It just means wise management, keeping nature in our future, not destroying it. Great example right now with the super bloom and all the people that want to see all the poppies in the fields. Stay on the trail. That's wise management. Don't go off the trail so you can get the best selfie in the middle of the poppy field. You're trampling all over the poppies. Then there'll be less poppies for everybody else to enjoy. You have to take care of it and conserve what we have. Okay? So manage. The goal is to manage and protect everything for everybody, not just us use whatever we want. Maximizing the benefits of the ecosystem while also weighing out economic costs. We can't just do this and have a limitless supply of money. Okay? This is a short lecture. Type of biodiversity that includes inheritance, information carried. This is going to be genetics, right? Inheritance. Anytime you see inheritance, we're talking about genetics and the DNA that gets passed on from parent to offspring. Populations of invasive species tend to increase rapidly because they don't have a natural predator. They're growing uncontrolled. Wise management of natural resources. It gave you the answer already. Conservation. By focusing on protecting ecosystems, biologists hope to preserve biological diversity and global biodiversity. And lastly, in a food pyramid, biological magnification results in the increased amount of the toxic substance in organisms at the highest level. So next time you're buying seafood, look for the warning label about which types of seafood you want to limit your consumption of because of biological accumulation, biomagnification. Okay, so finish up your Cornell notes, write your questions, write your summary. This is the very last lecture for this section before we get to our test on Friday. Okay, get those notebooks done, everybody. I'll see you in class tomorrow.